brand new, all-time favourite kind of like 6-star books, and I fell in love with her writing. It was just the ultimate cozy vibe, and I feel like could just be a standalone. This isn't my favourite Ashley Poston. I picked this one, and boy oh boy was I glad I did. Hi guys, it's Rachel and it's time to sit down and discuss my favourite books of 2024. As I stated in my New Year reset video, which I'll link up above and down below if you haven't seen it, I didn't have the best reading year. I think I only rated 5 or 6 books out of the 75 that I read 5-star. That doesn't include rereads, because I did reread some of my favourite books this year, just to sometimes assist me in getting out of slumps, which I always do. So not all of the 5 stars I read this year were brand new 5 stars to me, which is really sad. I'm really hoping 2025 is a better reading year for me in terms of just higher ratings in the books I read. Fingers crossed. I have currently started my first book of 2025 and it has potential, and I'm like praying that it's going to be a 5-star. Like, please, can we just get off on the right foot? Pretty please. But anyway, enough about 2025. We're going back and talking through all the books that I rated 4, 4.5 and 5 stars in 2024. The books that really stood out to me, the books I kind of count as favourites. Unfortunately, I don't think I have any like brand new all-time favourite kind of like 6-star books from the books I read in 2024, which is really sad, but I still had some massive highlights this year that I want to talk about and recommend to you guys. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it. I have kind of done them in tier ranking order, starting with number 10 all the way up to number 1 as like my most favourite book, but all of them range between a 4, 4.5 and a 5-star, but they're not in like order. So I have some 5 stars right at the top, and then it goes down to 4.5s, and then it goes back to 5s, because the way I do my top books are just based on gut feelings more so than the actual ratings. So without further ado, let's hop into number 10. And in number 10, I'm kind of already breaking the rules. It's not a single book, it's a series, and that is the Off-Campus series by Elle Kennedy. I liked the deal, I gave it a 4-star, but that wasn't my best book within that series. The Score by Elle Kennedy, which is the 3rd book, did get a 5-star from me and has to be my favourite out of the kind of like 5-book series. But I just wanted to put the entire series on this list because I discovered Elle Kennedy this year. I say this year, we're now in 2025. I discovered Elle Kennedy last year and I fell in love with her writing. She is not the most perfectly kind of like articulate author, but she just writes really good, fun, bingeable romances that get my heart swooning. I fell in love with the characters, I fell in love with the whole universe. I really enjoyed going back to each book and seeing the cameos of the side characters from the previous books to see kind of like where they got up to. So kind of like each book that you read in order, you kind of got like an epilogue of the previous book. And I just absolutely adored my entire reading whilst reading these 5 books, and I'm so glad I managed to binge all of them in this past year because I really did find a new love for Elle Kennedy. So much so, I actually fear for other ice hockey romances I read in the future, because I do also like Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. I read Wildfire, didn't really feel like an ice hockey romance, and then last year I also tried to read Daydream, which is the 3rd book in the Hannah Grace ice hockey universe, and I kept getting confused with the off-campus characters. That's how much the Off-Campus series has ingrained into my brain and my heart, because every single time I was reading Daydream, I had to put it down because I was just getting so confused. I just kept thinking like, where's Garrett? Where's Hannah? Oh wait, that's in the Off-Campus series, not in the Icebreaker series. So I do fear that Elle Kennedy has ruined other ice hockey romances for me because I have such a passion for the Off-Campus series. But hey ho, hopefully I'll read Daydream in 2025 and it'll be absolutely fine. But yeah, just shows that the Off-Campus series really did impact me in such a good way this year. I just had so much fun reading all the books. Yes, they are steamy. Do not go into them if you don't like steaming books, especially The Score. Just as like, I'm just going to be a public service announcement. The Score, the first chapter in The Score, which is the 3rd book, starts with a threesome. Just putting it out there. So if you're not into smut, if you're not into like a lot of steamy sex scenes, maybe this series really isn't for you, but I had a fun time reading it and it's made my top 10 books of 2024. So in at number 9 is another Elle Kennedy book. Surprise, surprise. Like I just said, she has become one of my favourite authors of last year. So in at number 9 is The Graham Effect by Elle Kennedy, which is a spin-off series from the Off-Campus series with The Deal, The Mistake, The Score, The Goal, The Legacy. Oh my god, I remembered them all. The spin-off series is called the Campus Diaries series, with the first one being The Graham Effect, which follows Garrett and Hannah's children, who are the couple from the first book, The Deal, in the Off-Campus series. You follow them as they go to college at Briar U for the first time. Our main character, who's the daughter of Hannah and Garrett, is an ice hockey player as well. So it's still kind of including that ice hockey vibe in the same universe, in the same university, just with the kind of like offspring of the first series. And what I loved most about this one, once again, is the cameos that you got throughout this book that featured the characters from the first series, because the friendship group is so close-knit in the off-campus series that the children of Hannah and Garrett have like aunties and uncles that are all the couples from the off-campus series. So you get loads of different cameos, and it's like loads of little epilogues of like where the characters are now. And oh, it's just so precious. I enjoyed it so much. I squealed when Dean and Ali, who are the couple in the score, came in and featured in the Graham Effect, because I love them so much. So in at number 9 is another Elle Kennedy book, but I am not complaining or whatsoever. I just had so much fun with Elle Kennedy's writing in 2024 that I cannot wait to continue reading her in 2025. Sticking with the romances, because most of the books on this list are romances, just as an FYI, is When in Rome by Sarah Adams. Sarah Adams is the second author that I really fell in love with in 2024 alongside Elle Kennedy. I read Sarah Adams for the first time in 2024 and fell in love with her romances. This is the second book I read of hers. Her other book that I read features higher up on this list. If you know, you know. This is the first book in the When in Rome companion series, which is a small town romance series following 3 sisters. Each book you have a different sister. This one follows our main character Amelia Rose, who is a kind of like really famous pop icon, and she's just getting really burnt out with the fame and the paparazzi and just constantly being in the limelight. So she takes a respite in a small town called Rome in Kentucky. Then you have the love interest Noah Walker, who runs the bakery in the small town of Rome, Kentucky. And when they have their meet cute because Amelia's car is broken down in front of his house, a romance ensues from there. And it's small town, it's precious. I love the whole community feel, I love the whole neighborhood, and I just absolutely love the 3 sisters and their friendship, because the 3 sisters are friends with Amelia in this book, and you get to see kind of like their friendship blossom throughout the 3 books, I'm hoping, because the 3rd book's on my 2025 TBR, which is the video coming to you soon. And I just absolutely adore Sarah Adams' writing style. She writes just easy, bingeable stories that really get your heart spooning, just like Elle Kennedy. Just a little bit less smutty than Elle Kennedy. So if you're looking for a really cute, swoon-worthy romance, maybe try Sarah Adams if you're not looking for that like smutty kind of story. Stepping away from the romance ever so slightly, definitely, is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I cannot believe, 1, I read this book this year, and 2, that it was a 5-star, which, by the way, When in Rome was also a 5-star. I just never had an inkling that I was ever going to pick up this book, and then I saw it for 99 on Kindle deals, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to give it a go. I'll download it and see if I fancy reading it one day. And one day I was just really in the mood to read a cozy fantasy. There is another fantasy book on this list, which I'll talk about a little bit later on, so it's not like I've never stepped my foot into fantasy before. I definitely am a fantasy reader in a particular way. Like, I'm really fussy with my fantasies, and fantasies for me definitely have to have a lot of romance, a lot of character building, and a lot of like that kind of like cozy community feel, which is what Legends and Lattes definitely has. This book basically follows, if you don't know and you've been living under a rock, it follows our main character Viv, who is an orc, and after years and years of adventuring and revenging people and killing people and doing all that like fun fantasy adventure things, she decides enough is enough and she wants to settle down. And one day when she was out adventuring, she discovered something called coffee, and she found it in the realm of the gnomes, and she's never seen it anywhere else before. So she's gone on a hunt and found a really small, quaint town that has never heard of coffee before, and she decides to open a coffee shop. And that is just the start. This book is full of cozy vibes, real core community feeling, when she just gets and rallies everyone around her in helping her build this kind of like coffee shop. And she has people to help her out. She has like a woodworker, and they're all kind of like mythical creatures, and it's a very diverse read. And I just constantly kept squealing. I constantly needed to binge the book. I did read it on Kindle and I loved it so much I went out and got myself a physical copy, and I'm so excited to continue on with this series. The next one being Bookshop and Bone Dust. I'm really excited to see kind of like where Viv started, because that one is a prequel to this one. But if you're looking for a cozy fantasy, I highly recommend this one. It was just the ultimate cozy vibe. And this is where we get a little bit funky, because this next book was a 4.5 star. Still absolutely incredible, had such an amazing time reading it. We are back in the romance category, and that is Love Story by Lindsay Kelk. This is Lindsay Kelk's latest release. It came out in 2024, and it's my favourite Lindsay Kelk standalone release. If you don't know and you haven't met me before, hi, I'm Rachel. One of my favourite romance series of all time is the I Heart series by Lindsay Kelk, but I count that as a series because it's a 7-book romance series. This is one of her standalones that she's released, and it's my favourite standalone that she's released. It was so good. I had such a good time reading it. This book basically follows our main character, Sophie Taylor, who is a teacher but she also secretly has written the best-selling new steamy romance novel on the bookshelves called Butterflies. And what's so iffy about this is that her parents are very articulate literary agents who don't kind of see romance as a good genre of writing, of book. So she has hidden it from everyone she knows because she doesn't want anyone to know that she's written this really steamy, smutty book. And then one day a guy called Joe Walsh figures things out and figures out that she is the author of this incredibly best-selling romance novel. And they have to try and keep it hidden when her dad has his kind of like retirement party from this big literary agency that he's been part of for years, and he's very high up and he's very well known and very much loved. So there's loads of literary agents at this party at her parents' house, and obviously Joe Walsh also being in the industry, he's also invited. So the two of them have to try and figure out how to keep this secret hidden amongst this house party of loads of literary agents who don't kind of see romance as a good genre. And it's just a barrel of laughs, the situations that they get themselves in. It's just absolutely hilarious. I was laughing out loud, and I just really enjoyed not only the romance but just the family dynamic of this book, because it's so centered around family, with her trying to keep this secret hidden from her parents and her sister, who loves the book but doesn't know that her sister wrote it. It's just, there's so many awkward situations that you're just like, oh my god, I can't believe you got yourself into this. But it just makes for such a good book, and I had such a good time reading it. So yeah, a new favourite Lindsay Calc for me this year, and I'm very, very happy about it. You can't have a Lindsay Calc without a Page Tune. So in at number 5, we're halfway through the list, is Seven Summers by Page Tune. This is also her 2024 release. Lindsay Calc and Page Tune tend to release one book a year, and this is Page Tune's 2024 release. And oh my god, a complete different vibe to Love Story. This is a very much emotional contemporary romance that follows our main character Liv and Finn, who when they are younger meet at a Cornish bar and go their separate ways, and every single summer they come back to each other. As long as they're both single, they spend that summer together. However, this year Liv goes back to Cornwall, Finn isn't there, and she bumps into a new character called Tom. So Liv has to make an impossible choice between the two of them. Does she want the adventurous Finn, or does she want the stable Tom? And it sounds like a love triangle, but it's so much more than that, because they never do overlap, and it's just so beautifully written. It's so heart-wrenching, and I think once again it's become one of my new favourite Page Tune books. I've read a lot of Page Tune, and I still think I need to do a reread. My favourite is 5 Years From Now, which follows a very similar storyline but very different. It's more like childhood best friends who only see each other every year and kind of grow up together in that way, whereas this is more kind of like focused on the adulthood of only seeing each other once a year. So very similar vibes, but I need to reread 5 Years From Now to see whether it tops Seven Summers or not, but definitely one of my favourite Page Tune books now, and I'm dying to give it a reread. I'm so excited to give it a reread. I love the writing, I love the story, I love the characters. I was heartbroken. It was just such a tearjerker as well. I didn't cry, but I wanted to. It's definitely an emotional book, and I really, really enjoyed it, and that's got my top spot for number 5 of my best books of 2024. Going back to the 5 stars, because both Seven Summers and Love Story both got a 4.5, but we're now going back to 5 stars. And in at number 4 is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I feel like this was on everyone's best books of 2023 list, but I only just got around to reading it in 2024. But I read it right at the beginning of the year, so it does feel like I read it so long ago. And I did read Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows this year, but this one I feel like could just be a standalone. I liked Ruthless Vows, but we can kind of forget about that one for now. This one is a kind of like romance fantasy book about two main characters, Iris and Rowan, who are both kind of like writers at the same newspaper agency, and they're kind of both competing for the same job promotion. Iris's brother has gone off to war, and so that they can keep in contact, she keeps writing him letters on her very old typewriter. Little does she know that that typewriter is magical, and the letters aren't going to her brother, they're going to Rowan, her work rival, because he has the companion magical typewriter. So there's only 2 in the world, and they're connected. And so every time that she writes this letter and posts it under her door, it goes to Rowan's typewriter instead of her brother. And a romance ensues from there. A romance ensues from just writing letters. And I think that's such an incredible kind of unique way of telling a romance set in a fantasy world that is in the middle of a war. And Iris ends up going to the front lines of this war to be a war correspondent using her typewriter, and that's how they stay in contact with each other. And it's just a beautiful told story. I read this book on a really busy weekend in February, and I did not want to put it down. I did not want to go celebrate my dad's birthday. I did not want to do anything else because all I wanted to do was read this book, but I couldn't because I had plans. But I absolutely adored it. It was so bingeable. It was so good. I couldn't wait to get into Ruthless Vows because the ending was such a cliffhanger, and I just had a really, really fun time reading it. It's definitely more of a romance book than it is a fantasies. Yeah, very much enjoyed this book. This is in at number 4. In at number 3 is another 5-star, and that is a novel love story by Ashley Poston. If you don't know, hi, I'm Rachel, and I'm obsessed with Ashley Poston's writing. This is also a 2024 release. It came out this year. I was dying to get my hands on it and read it as soon as it came out. This isn't my favourite Ashley Poston. 7 Year Slip, I think, will still be my favourite. I'm going to have to reread them and try and pick an order because I don't think I can. But I definitely know this one didn't hit me in the feels as much as her previous two because I don't think there was that emotional attachment. What I love most about Ashley Poston is the fact that she includes some sort of magical element within her romance stories that make them sound and feel so real, yet you know that they're not because they have some sort of magical or fantasy element to them. And this one's no different. This one follows our main character, Eileen, who ends up having her car break down on a really kind of like horrible night storm as she's driving to her book club that she spends with her friends for a week every year, and she ends up having to pull over on the side of the road because her car breaks down, and she ends up going down this really kind of like small dirt kind of road, and she ends up in her favourite fictional world, and she ends up having to try and finish off the last story that the author never wrote because she passed away. And she enters this world and she starts to become friends with all her favourite fictional characters, and she finds a sense of belonging, and she meets a mysterious man who isn't part of that story that she knows and loves so much. So where does this mystery man come in? I'm getting goosebumps talking about it, but it didn't hit me in the feels as much as a 7 Year Slip or The Dead Romantics, but I still absolutely loved reading it. I just loved all of those like book tropes. Some people I know didn't like it because of that, but I think it really enhanced the book because of that. Being a book reader and a book lover so much, having those things in the book and made you feel really seen, and I just absolutely adored it. Once again, Ashley Poston's writing was perfection. I could have tabbed up this entire book, written in it, which I will do hopefully one day, because there's just so many good kind of like quotable moments, and I just had a really, really fun time reading it. And I'm so glad that Ashley Poston is 3 for 3 in terms of 5 stars for me. So yay for me. I'm really hoping that Sounds Like Love, which doesn't actually sound that good to me, which comes out in 2025, is just as good. And I'm trying not to put doubt in my head about that book, but yeah, another 5-star book for me for Ashley Poston. We're quickly coming up to the end. In at number 2 is Out on a Limb by Hannah Bowen Young. Oh, this book was so good. This book got me out of my reading slump as soon as I got back from Disney in September. I didn't really know what I wanted to read. I just know that I wanted to get back on track with my reading and my content and everything as soon as I got back from holiday. So I just decided to pick up a brand new book, and I picked this one, and boy oh boy was I glad I did. This book was so good. This book basically follows our main character, Win. Has always felt a little bit different in her life because she only has one arm, and when she goes to her best friend's Halloween costume party and hooks up with a one-night stand who also only has one leg, and he dresses up as a pirate, and this just reminds me of why I love this book so much, that it was so funny. This book was so funny. I loved it so much. Oh yeah, just the characters, the writing, the banter, the sexual tension, just everything in this book was 5-star, hence why I got a 5-star from me. It was so good. I loved it so much. So when they hook up and have a one-night stand and Win finds out she's pregnant, they end up moving in together to try and co-parent, and their relationship blossoms from there. So it's a really interesting take on the unexpected pregnancy trope, but it's done so well. It's done beautifully well, and what I loved most about this book is their kind of like relationship as it blossoms from friendship to romance through kind of like the pregnancy. And then also her best friends Sarah and Caleb were just precious and also so funny and gave some great comedic value to this story. And they have their own book coming out in 2025, which I'm super, super excited for, which is Out of the Woods. So I just absolutely adored this book. This book was stunning, and I really highly recommend you read it if you're interested in it. 5 stars. And then, drum roll please, my favourite book of the year, the book that stands out in my memory as like one of my favourite moments of reading in 2024. Like I said, my reading year wasn't all that amazing, and when I think back on the year, there aren't many books that really stand out to me in terms of like, yeah, I absolutely adored that book. That book is a brand new favourite, 6 stars, I can't stop talking about it. I don't actually have many of those books, but all of these books are books that I look back on fondly. And this is the book that truly stands out as like the ultimate favourite. Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. This is the second book in the When in Rome trilogy, with the third one coming out in 2025, which I will be reading in January, and I'm so excited. This also got a 5-star from me. This is the second book, but I read it first, so I really don't think you need to read them in order to appreciate the full kind of like story that Sarah Adams has created with this world. This is Annie and Will's story. Annie is the more kind of like quiet, timid sister out of the 3 sisters that you follow in the When in Rome trilogy, and she's determined to find love in her life to complement her own. And when the date that she's currently on actually calls her boring, Will, who is the bodyguard of the pop icon Amelia Rose, which is the main character in the When in Rome book, overhears her date call her boring. He rescues her and a romance ensues from there. And oh my god, Will and Annie were just perfect for each other. They are definitely opposites attract in terms of like the grumpy sunshine and just kind of like the more protective one over the more kind of like timid one. And it was just absolutely precious. I adored this book so much. I think from chapter 1 I knew this book was going to be 5 stars, and it just lived up to everything I wanted it to be and more. Absolutely adored this story, and obviously with it being my first Sarah Adams, I just knew from the minute I read this book Sarah Adams was going to become one of my new favourite romance authors. And then later on in the year I read When in Rome, and that was also a 5-star, so I was like, yeah, okay, Sarah Adams has solidified herself as one of my favourite authors, and I'm just so excited to see what else she has in store. Obviously I haven't read all of her books that she has out yet, and I'm hoping 2025 is the year that I read some more from her. But yeah, this is definitely the highlight of my reading year for sure. I absolutely adored this book, and I cannot wait to read more Sarah Adams in 2025. So there we have it. Those are all of my top books of 2024. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments down below, what were your top books of 2024? Do we have any of the same? Are you now interested in reading any of the books I've spoken about today? I would love to know in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe down below to see future content from me. I do anything from weekly reading vlogs, monthly TBRs, monthly wrap-ups, and any other bookish content that you can think of I usually have on this channel, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys.